Why didn't we dress like Guns N' Roses for this? Jesus, what a miss.
Welcome to the Parts Room Podcast presented by Exodus 4x4.
I'm just looking at some of the comments on the actual video. I think there's some people we could answer to at some point in this.
Well, hey man, you know what? That's a good point. We did talk about printing off some of these questions from the Axle video and asking them. But I mean, if you got one, man, you got it pulled up, fire away. I'll be happy to answer it, and make sure we give a shout out to the person that did it. So bringing up stuff about axles, when do you beef up externally? When do you beef it up? We talked about, is a truss necessary on a stock Dana 44 axle? And, what kind of truss is worth it? Sleeves. Never been a fan of sleeves. Never, ever have I been a fan of sleeving an axle tube. Because I still seen them break at the housing. That is a ruined day. Like, you're not driving that vehicle. If you bend an axle tube, yeah, you can drive it home. But you're not going to drive a broken axle at the housing. Man, you're having that thing towed home. So I don't think that the sleeves are a great option. They may work for some people out there listening.
One, Flex It is asking if Dana Spicer offers those axles without brackets. Like you can get an F9 without brackets.
Yeah, you can get the UD60s bracketless. Done it before. And that's a great, if you guys are building like a TJ build or something, where you're going to be doing a lot of custom suspension work and you don't want those brackets on there, then absolutely you can order UD60s without brackets. Well, not a bad axle either. I really like the UD60. I know when they first came out, they caught a lot of flack for a lot of things but it seems like they corrected a lot of that stuff. And, there were some horror stories out there, though, that mislabeling the gear ratios on UD60s and guys blowing up transfer cases and shit. Yeah. Really? You got to throw it in 4 high and boom, while they're driving. Throw it in 4 high, going 30 miles an hour in a heavy built rig with mismatched gear ratios between front and rear. Yeah.
That's what you mean. Holy crap.
Bad day. Improperly preloading some bearings, or not even preloading them. Weak material for brackets, weak welds, stuff like that. There was a lot of issues, but it seemed like Spicer jumped in and eventually, ultimately got all that stuff resolved because we hadn't seen any issues. One time a couple of years ago, they probably didn't align both sides of the housing when they were welding in the brackets, and we were fighting something. We figured out what the problem was, but for the most part, though, we've installed a ton of those axles. They have great brakes, with the Eaton lockers. They're very reliable. So the UD60 has been great. So I like that axle. It's unfortunate that they raised the price on them enough to make them kind of price themselves out of the market, in my opinion.
Yep. We got a Pistol Borex asking what you think of Terraflex axles. Have you ever ran them? You know anything about them?
Seen them. Don't really, there's going to be another question there about fusion axles in a little bit. If you scrolled through, I don't have anything personal against the Terraflex axles. It's just, I feel like if you're going to build something, you stick to one thing and you do good. You do it good, right? I don't think the guy that makes the weird, what is that part that you can buy and put on the drive shaft to increase the angle so it doesn't go out? That's on the TJ. Yeah, Terraflex makes a part that for the JK that to replace the Repeza joint or whatever at the transfer case. Point being is Terraflex makes a lot of stuff. It's not all bad. It's not all great. I just have a problem with like companies that try and build everything. That would be like Rockcrawler coming out tomorrow and saying they build their own axle housings and this is what they are. It's like, well, I had the same problem with the Falcon shocks. Do I think Falcon shocks are bad? No, not at all. But I figure if you're going to be spending the kind of money that you would spend on Falcon shocks, and I should be fair that Falcon kind of falls in the middle between budget end price shocks and high end shocks. Falcon's somewhere in the middle, and I think that's what they were shooting for. But it just seems like Terraflex tries to put their fingers in all the pies. And well, if I'm buying an axle, I want to buy an axle from a manufacturer that they specialize in building axles, because that's a ton of money to buy tons. And, if you're going to be pouring money into that. Go with somebody that's been building differentials forever, like Curry. Dynatrack's been building them for a long time. I tell you one guy that you're not going to see on there a lot, and this kind of touches on the fusion thing, is East Coast Gear Supply makes great axles. I believe they're beginning to get a little bit more noticed. I know that certain companies out there are having their axles built, and we notice, man, these look very similar to something that East Coast Gear Supply would build. Well, it's because East Coast Gear Supply is the one building them. Those guys aren't building their own axles. East Coast Gear Supply, and I'm not going to name names, and I think that's kind of stupid that a guy would do that. It's like me saying, oh, we'll buy the Exodus 4x4, Dana 60. Well, why would you buy it from me? I mean, I'm not an axle manufacturer. Unless I'm taking Super Duty axles and I'm building them out for a specific purpose build. If you're just looking to buy crate like 60s front and rear, then, go to a company that builds axles. Don't go to guys that build suspensions and, grab handles and shocks and whatever else. Brakes, the brakes kind of go with axles. But, there's just a lot of different things that they're involved in. And so I think that I'd rather buy it from somebody that focuses on building axles. I mean, is that a fair answer? Good, reputable brands for replacement axle shafts that people could put in. Just to name off a few, Revolution Gear and Axle, I like those guys a lot because when you'd order axle shafts, they would come in already pre-installed with the bearings and seals already on them, so guys wouldn't have to take them out of the box and press them together and everything. That's a problem for the guy doing it in his garage because not everybody has a press set up to do that. Fortunately, as a shop, we have that. So not a big deal when we'd have to do that, but it is easier to take it out of the box and bolt it in. 10 Factory, that's a good one because they seem to always have a good amount of parts available and they have a 10-year warranty on their shafts. So Yukon seems a little bit pricier for the same product and not much gain on customer service or anything else. So I think between that, I think Revolution's always been my favorite axle shaft to buy because of the fact that they're already put together. Make sure you're checking out the Parts Room Podcast on Spotify, where you're not just going to listen to us, you also can watch us, or check us out on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts.
Just an animal out there. Huh? What? Me?